go fast, trade is necessary. I would say for both reasons. You need exports market, of course, for the produces you have in excess of your domestic consumption. But for the country like ours, which has to import a lot of construction and capital goods for generating double-digit or higher growth, we must also have trade. So trade is necessary to generate growth and also to see that demand, excess demand is made by external market. So Nepal is very much going to continue with its open trade regime, wants to further liberalize our trade regime as per the regional spirit, whatever the political dimension of the regional cooperation is. But let me start with the new talks of the present day. The issue of trade liberalization and the arguments and a lot of sayings that trade liberalization hasn't benefited all equally, at least. What is this? Why trade liberalization didn't benefit all countries equally, and why inter-country inequality kept on growing due to the kind of liberalizations we had in the past. And now we talk about quote-unquote trade war. Why we need to coin this word again, the word Cold War, the kind of trade war, which I think is something very new to us who only learned about Cold War long before. So I think there is something wrong in our trade regime, which we need to review, and this is time that we review, look in the perspectives of what we have done so far and what we intend to do. Also to see that in the next 12 years' time, we want to see a more equal world as the Sustainable Development Goals ask us to do. So I think this is time we review the global trade regime and also the regional trade regime. And also like to see how bilateralism is putting regional cooperation in a much more weak footing. In several instances when you have FTAs, we have seen that the spirit of regionalism has been on a shadow. So I don't know whether there is a complementarity between bilateralism and regionalism so far as trade is concerned. But oftentimes we can see this as a trade-off. So I think our trade experts, I can see in the dais, my colleagues would speak much more on this issue. One important aspect in our regional trade is the issue of complementarity or competition. We are almost same in South Asia. Agriculture predominates our economy. We manufacture similar kind of labor-intensive goods, and most of the time we compete each other. So when we compete each other, it's obvious that we put all kinds of barriers in our trade, be it poultry, be it rice, be it anything like potato or anything, because we do have complementarity, and if we don't have complementarity, and if you compete in the same product, and if you cannot do reciprocal kind of thing, you have to protect things of your country. That's why protection comes into picture. So I think the study, I haven't gone into the details of the book, but I have gone through the executive summary and I didn't find the kind of complementarity index being calculated in the book. If it is there, I would be fine to see how much complementarity we can introduce in our trade. And actually the product line issue, the assembly line issue, and then how we can have this kind of value chain activities in our manufacturing. I think these are some of the areas which could really enhance our trade from complementarity angle. One area which I can see would still work is the aviation industry that you have presented in the paper. Tourism. Tourism is really complementary, and we can do that. We compete, but also it could be complementary. That's why we're asking our neighbors to open up their skies, provide much more air routes to the neighboring countries so that we can get better connected. If India and Sri Lanka can have so much of air connection, why cannot Nepal and India, Bangladesh and Nepal, and for that matter Bhutan and Nepal can have the same thing, or Pakistan and Nepal? So this is one critical aspect, and I can see a lot of complementarity in services area, and most prominent of them is tourism. That would enhance our integration to a larger scale. There is also one issue related to skill sets. If we have different skill sets, then you must be having some of the relative advantages in trade. Some of the countries in this region are better in their skill sets, but these skill sets provide or produce goods and services which could be exported to third countries rather than to the same South Asian region. So unless we have the kind of skill sets to innovate and produce new goods or services, we cannot find market for the kind of products that are essential for countries of this region. So I think the same kind of traditional output structure, the same kind of innovation, the same kind of skill sets don't give us any differentiated approach towards complementing each other. So I think it's also a kind of similar situation where we try to minimize the impact coming from open trade, thus from imports. The para-tariffs and then non-tariff barriers, all reflecting in non-tariff measures, I think they are very much there. And I would again repeat that this is simply because every country wants some degree of protection in its niche production. It could be dairy, it could be poultry, it could be trekking, it could be some other industries which every country wants to put in a negative list. That's for obvious reason, because some of these areas are the ones for which we have to generate jobs, we have to create food security situation, and we might have to take care of some of the fundamental livelihoods of the people. So I think that this is necessary. The other aspect I would like to touch upon is the issue of non-reciprocity. Look at the structure of economy in South Asia. One single country contributing to more than 80% of the region's GDP. And if you want equal and reciprocal treatment, it cannot happen. The size effect must be addressed in this theory. Otherwise, a bigger size will eat up the smaller sizes. So this size effect, unless we discuss, it cannot be reciprocal. It has to be non-reciprocal. So on that basis, we don't say that we have to be protected forever, but we need some time before we can also be coming in an equal footing. So this is also one important issue I think this forum and this discussion can take up to further discuss. The numbers. The report itself mentions about informal trade, and we don't know how much is the size of our informal trade. Some economists put it as high as 50% of the formal trade. And then if you look at the trade mispricing numbers in either way, in exports and imports in both ways, and look at the trade discrepancy between exporter countries' statistics and importer countries' statistics, even taken care of this CIF aspect, there is a large difference. So it only tells that there are several aspects of trade statistics which would perhaps increase the regional trade proportion from 5% to little bit more. I think it could be 6-7% if we could fully capture the trade statistics within the region. The other aspect related to trade is also services in labor movements. This is informal, but this is taking place. In several countries, we can see migrant workers working, and they are not fully captured maybe in terms of our service exports or imports, not even in remittances. So integration in service market perhaps is not fully reflected in what we do in our reports. So both goods and services, I think even in tourism, some of the tourists just cross border and have a look of the country, go back without having any records. That we can see very much in our Lumini, the workplace of tourists. So this kind of statistical errors are there in looking at the numbers. So I'd like to see that every country take care of this and the statistical aspect carefully and see what exactly is the level of integration. The other aspect I would like to quickly touch upon is connectivity, particularly in terms of border infrastructure, I would say. infrastructure at the customs point. Look at Nepal-India border point. It's a mess because lanes are narrow, bridges are old, and the freights, the trucks carrying goods wait for days and days to cross the narrow bottleneck at the border point. We really need to see that these bottlenecks are taken care of. This is road connectivity. We do have our rail connections growing, but unless we have some other supportive measures at border point, we may not be able to clear our trade, particularly when it comes to SPS and other related matters. We don't have labs, sanitary labs, phytosanitary labs, or quarantine labs at the border point. I don't know how many miles the goods have to move before they can get cleared from the other country. It could be 300, 400, or 500 kilometers. So that's one issue. The other issue related is also the other logistics at the border point, at least the godowns and then the cold houses to protect goods which could be otherwise spoiled or rotten down. So I think this border infrastructure, customs infrastructure and connectivity on road infrastructure is so much important. Finally, the trust deficit. Yes, the perception that any country's import will kill our economy vis-a-vis the need that unless we trade we cannot grow faster. I think this perception error oftentimes makes us overly protectionist. But having said that, I would also like to say that this is not the era that we maximize our welfare by damaging all our industrial and our economic activity base. This is time that we protect our fundamentals and try to do trade in areas where we have comparative advantage. Had there been only the welfare gain taught in our theory, I don't think there would be any tension in the world in trade regime. The tensions are there because a degree of protection, a degree of concern for domestic industry is always there. So, going away from the welfare economics, I think we need to see how we can build our nation through economic activity, also creating markets for our products and reciprocating in the same thing, in the same area, in the same equal footing, rather than some countries asking to others more concession than what they provide or offer to other countries. I think we are in this era of total review of trade regimes and total review of how we can make global trade a fair regime for all, also maximizing the consumer welfares, but at the same time also looking into the matter that the countries must grow and be able to finance the consumption that we need to import. After all, unless we have capacity to finance the imports, our welfare remains a very short-lived affair. It doesn't work for long. We need to build our capacity to procure and get those things for our consumption, and for that we need to do some other activities which have to be protected. I think we have to balance between what we do to protect our economy and how to maximize the consumer's welfare. This might be something different from the conventional notion that we have been carrying, but I do hold these premises. So with this, let me thank World Bank once again for coming up such a brilliant book. This provides a lot of room for our improvement in our trade policy regimes and provides also input to the policy makers to work on this book. So once again, thank you very much, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share some of my thoughts regarding this publication.